Hi friends, I hope that you are having a wonderful day today. In today's video, which as my other videos that have been uploaded and published on Mondays are going to be, is a Patreon early access video, we are going to be talking about Luciano the Jumper and progressing their chain all the way up to a third jump. For some needed context, Luciano the Jumper is a jumper on a jump chain that is a self-insert of me, Luciano, the creator and narrator of this particular video series and the owner of the channel that this video is being uploaded on. It is an adventure-based jump chain. The last couple of jumps we have done have been Super Mario 64 and then Generic Fist. Today we are going to go over to Sonic Adventure and we are going to begin to give Luciano the Jumper the first taste of some actual concrete superpowers. I hope that you are as excited as I am. We are also going to be taking drawbacks for this particular jump, and we are going to be beginning to go ahead and progress Luciano the Jumper as a more power-based jumper for the very first time. We're going to be dabbling in supernatural abilities, although they are only supernatural in the context of the fact that Luciano is a jumper. They are not supernatural in the context of the world that we are going to be going to, which is the world of Sonic Adventure. I hope that you guys are as excited as I am. Let's go ahead and get on over to the jump. Now we are over in the Jumpdoc. This is the Jumpdoc for the very first Sonic Adventure game. It was a fantastic 3D Sonic game, and we are going to be talking about it as well as talking about this jump. This jump is by someone named Sonic Cody, and it is over on the Reddit's Jump Chain community. We are going to be sharing links to it in the video description, so anyone who wants to go through and read it themselves certainly can. And now we're going to go ahead and take a look over at the location section. There are only 3 locations of interest in this particular setting, even though there is a wider world that people just do not get to explore in the confines of the video game. There is Station Square, Mystic Ruins, and the Egg Carrier, which are the game's 3 little adventure maps. They serve as hub worlds where people can go from world to world and where story events can happen so that way the plot can progress. Now let's go ahead and take a look over at the Origins section. So, for those of you who are curious, we are going to go ahead and actually do this particular thing in just a second, but your age is going to be 1d5 plus 10, and your gender will be the same as it was in the previous jump. You can, of course, pay 50 points to change it, to change either one of these things, or 100 points to change both. Each background has a sort of specific character that they are tied to, and because of this, each origin will also provide their own specific alt form that is based on the type of species that the character in question is. The Speedster, which is the origin that we're going to go with, will be a hedgehog Mobian. Mobian is a general term that is applied to the people who live on the planet Mobius, which is the planet that the Sonic the Hedgehog series mostly takes place on, although some settings do take place on Earth. The tech origin is based off of Tails, and it is a Fox Mobian. The Guardian is based off of Knuckles, and they will be an Echidna Mobian if someone takes it. A Rascal is based off of Amy, and because of that, they'll also be a Hedgehog Mobian. The Fisher is based off of Big the Cat, and because of that, they'll be a Cat Mobian. The robotic origin is based off of E106 Gamma, and because of that, someone will be a robot if they choose to take this origin. Each time that we go ahead and pop this webpage open, this is rolladice.net, we are going to be getting a different number, but just so that it can be on screen, we're going to go ahead and roll it right now. So that means that our jumper is going to go ahead and be 11. Their gender will be non-binary because that was their gender in the previous jump. They're going to be a speedster jumper, which means that they're going to have a perk line based off of Sonic's. We're going to go ahead and skip past the general perks for right now. In case you do not remember, general perks refer to perks that are non-discounted. These sections often have very powerful perks, but first I want to talk about the radicalness of the Speedster origin and the fact that we are going to be going all in on it as we have in the past. However, we are going to be taking drawbacks and we are going to be getting perks and things that are not unique to this particular origin. But first, I wanted to go ahead and talk about each of the perks that we're going to be getting as well as each of the items. So, here is the perk list. We're going to go through and briefly summarize each one of them. Dude with Attitude, which is free for speedsters, is just a snark and quippiness improver. It allows someone to come up with the perfect comeback and the perfect snarky comments whenever they want to. It is modeled after Sonic's personality and the sorts of one-liners that he loves to make. Homing Attack is a perk that gives you the ability to do what Sonic does, which is when you jump, you can turn into a ball that will deal damage to any foe that comes into contact with it. That's not the only thing that you can do with this. You can also do an aerial strike called a homing attack. This attack will allow you to launch yourself at a target while in the air and in ball form, which means that you can hit them with the full force of your body and speed. This is a very strong ability for someone like Luciano, who has martial arts abilities as well as very minor speed-based abilities, which are, over the course of this jump, going to finally cease to be minor and are going to begin to become significant. The next perk is the one of the big ones. I'm so fond of this perk. Fastest thing alive. Sonic speed. You can run at supersonic speeds with very little effort. You can accelerate and stop suddenly without any consequences. In addition, you also have the spin dash. This will come with enhanced reaction time. Gotta go fast. And I am so excited about this particular perk because I'm sure that some of you may remember this, but back in our first jump, Luciano got the Speed Demon perk, which was a speed running perk that allowed you to do things with your speed once you reached high enough levels. It allowed you to effectively glitch and allowed you to do speedrunner tactics once you had enough speed. And in the previous jump, Generic Fist jump, Luciano could not get that level of speed. But now they have the sort of speed where they can begin to take advantage of speedrunner tricks, which is going to be fantastic. Luciano, as I previously mentioned, is a very physical type jumper. For those of you who don't know, I myself am disabled in real life, and it is something that affects every aspect of my day-to-day life. Because of this, when I created a jumper, I didn't want to go full Eldritch, full horror yet. I probably will never do that with this jumper. I would like to keep this jumper not extraordinarily powerful, although as you can see, I'm not opposed to Luciano getting powers. I just didn't want it to happen particularly fast. The final perk in this particular origin is surprisingly durable, and the way that it works is it makes it so that you can survive long jumps without taking any or very minimal damage to yourself. I think that that is very good. It is something that actually shores up one of Mario's weaknesses. In many Mario games, there is in fact fall damage, and there is fall damage for Luciano. I'm assuming that there was fall damage for Luciano moving forward up until this point, or at the very least there was regular fall damage, because this perk actually does not grant you total immunity from fall damage. It very specifically states that if you fall from orbit like you could in Sonic Adventure 2, you would still perish, but you have the ability to survive jumping out of an airplane or something like that, which is incredibly handy, especially with Luciano's parkour abilities from Super Mario 64 and from other jumps that we will probably be going to in the future. But those are all of the perks. You are going to be able to see different perks as we are progressing. If you want to, you can pause this video at any points, but as I previously mentioned, we are absolutely going to be putting the link in the video description, so you can feel free to use that, so that way you can actually read this at your own pace. We are now over at the Lightspeed Shoes section. let's go ahead and do just a little bit of math so that way we know where we are. As a reminder, the first purchases for Origins are usually discounted, and oftentimes those discounts render them free. So the Snarky perk that we purchased earlier is now free. The homing attack, super speed, and anti-fall damage perks were not. So that would be 100, which reduces us to 900, and then it would be 200, which reduces us to 700, and then it would be 300, which reduces us to 400. Lightspeed Shoes is going to be free. It is Sonic's first upgrade in Sonic Adventure 1. It is a pair of shoes that grants someone access to the Lightspeed Dash, which allows you to gather energy until an aura starts to illuminate your skin and your body. It will take 3 seconds to do that. Once you release the energy, you will gain a sudden burst of speed, which allows you to hypersonic dash across a trail. In the particular setting that this originates from, that is a trail that allows you to just dash after a pair of rings. If rings are in a more or less straight or continuous line, you can use them to navigate a place at very fast speeds. The crystal ring is an upgrade to the Lightspeed shoes that would cost us an additional 100, which would reduce us to 300 choice points total. It reduces the amount of time it takes to charge up a dash. And then the Ancient Light, which would cost us 200 choice points, reduces us to 100 choice points before discounts. And what that does is it's a strange array of lights that will allow Sonic to hurl himself at enemies as a form of attack using a Lightspeed dash, and now it allows Luciano to do that. So as you can tell, the items over here are nothing super complex. It's just a set of upgrades to Luciano's existing capabilities that allow Luciano to replicate the feats of Sonic, but not Supersonic, over the course of this particular little jump that we are in. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the drawbacks in the scenarios. Gone ahead and shown off what items and perks we are going to be getting on our first look through this particular Jumpdoc, or at the very least on our initial assessment of the very first sections. Let's go ahead and take a better look at some other sections. The reason I like to go through a Jumpdoc in this particular way is that it gives people an opportunity to see every element in a Jumpdoc, some things that they might have missed while they're actually going through it themselves. For those of you who don't know, with this particular jump, you can get the main cast of playable characters. In fact, every playable character as a companion, which means that they can follow you along, they can be imported into jumps in the future, and they can have perks and builds of their very own. We are not going to be doing that, but it is worth noting that that is a thing that you can do. We are, in fact, going to be doing the scenarios. We're going to be doing both scenarios. We're going to be doing Sonic and Jumper Adventure, which rewards jumpers for going through a story with a unique mini perk and with the ability to take the character that they helped along their journey as a companion for free. In addition to that, it opens the pathway for the central scenario in this particular Jumpdoc. And we are going to be taking Sonic. We are not going to be taking Sonic as a companion, but we are going to be doing Sonic's little story arc as our first one. And because of that, we are going to be going ahead and getting the quick skill acquisition that Sonic has, or at least that some interpretations of Sonic seem to think Sonic has. So that is going to be a boost to our overall learning speed and our overall training speed, which is something that's really rad. We are also going to be doing We Are All Super. I am pretty sure that what this means, particularly the section that I'm about to highlight, means that we're going to be getting every single one of the main rewards in addition to the Supersonic and Friends and the Chaos is Power perks. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that fully means that we're getting. So we are going to be getting Tails' piloting ability. We are going to be getting Knuckles' ability to sense energies. We're going to be getting Amy's danger sense, which I think is a really, really, really strong and also fairly free way to get some sort of precognitive danger sense. We're going to be getting luck boosts to finding our friends, and we are also going to be getting the ability to resist and break out of mental conditioning and programming. We are not a companion type jumper, and by we I mean both Luciano, the real actual human, and Luciano the jumper. Neither of us particularly relish the thought of having companions. In fact, we don't even really like the thought of having followers along our journey, but that is going to be what we're going to be doing for scenarios. It's worth noting that we are going to be taking a number of different drawbacks in that, and before we go ahead and take our drawbacks and actually look at how they're going to affect our time in this jump, it is worth noting our current overall cost, our current overall budget at this particular moment is 100 choice points after having purchased everything from the speeder stuff and nothing else. We got 2 100 things for free, the Lightspeed shoes and the Quippiness perk. The 200 choice points things that we got were discounted, which reduced us to 800. Then we ended up spending a total of 400 points purchasing the final upgrade for the items and the supersonic speed perk. And the final thing that we purchased was the durability perk, which cost us 300 choice points, which was a total of 900 choice points. We still have money even without doing drawbacks. We could go ahead and use that to purchase and upgrade stuff for our essential body mod, but first I wanted us to go ahead and take a look at the drawbacks that this jump has to offer. There's a significant number that we will be taking. We are now in the drawbacks section. It is worth noting that I am going to be speaking out loud while we do this section, so that way we are able to keep track of Luciano the jumper, the fantastic little hedgehog speedster that is going to be traveling throughout this particular settings choice point total. The first one that we're going to be taking is Strange Dialogue, which will bring our choice point total up to 200 points. After this, we are going to be taking Bring Them On, which will bring us up to 500 choice points, and then Tricky Layouts, which will bring us up to 800, More Resilient Foes, which will bring us up to 1200, and also we are going to be taking No Outside Info, which is going to bring us up to 1700 points. This is a significant number of points. I'm going to go ahead and talk about why I wanted to do all of these particular ones. We are going to start off by mentioning that Strange Dialogue is just a minor quality of life thing, but it is not something that actually reduces our abilities in any particular way. Bring It On is something that is going to make fighting enemies a little bit tougher. That's the reason why it's more expensive. But because of that, we are going to have a chance to increase Luciano's chances to get acquainted with their new abilities, especially because some of these new abilities synergize remarkably well with other abilities. As I've previously mentioned, having the durability perk coupled with Luciano's parkour skills from Super Mario 64 is a fantastic combination. Having super speed and speed demon, and also having super speed and the martial arts that Luciano knows, make Luciano a far more competent fighter now that they have super speed and the enhanced durability that comes with being a Sonic type Mobian. The tricky layouts is something that is nullified by both persistence and also super speed. Layouts for stages is not going to be a real issue for Luciano. And then after that, we are going to have No Outside Info. I am perfectly fine always doing these kinds of drawbacks. In fact, I strongly prefer having these kinds of drawbacks over having mini gauntlet-like conditions wherein there is no outside perks or there's no access to one's warehouse or personal reality. I think that this is a much better challenge, and I like it because it does not actually make the jumper weaker. It just removes one of the elements of jumps that is that can be the most game changing, because oftentimes having meta knowledge of a setting is a far more useful tool than having one's ridiculous superpowers, especially if your ridiculous superpowers are not to the point where you can tank a nuke to the face or you can outrun the speed of light or something. As long as your power level is not absurdly ridiculous, it is far more of a challenge to get rid of meta knowledge than it would be to get rid of someone's personal powers. And that is one of the reasons why I ended up liking that. But now that we have this, we're going to go ahead and do an adjusted build that takes all of these choice points into account. Okay, so 1700 is our remaining budget. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the different sections we're going to be visiting. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, it's going to be the general section, it is going to be Knuckles' section, and then it's going to be Gamma's section before we get over to the items. So, we're going to go ahead and take 300 points worth of things right in this section. We're going to be taking small animal simulation and just your average walking, talking, anthropomorphic animal. So just your average walking, talking, anthropomorphic animal normalizes the otherwise potentially horrifying or terrifying effects of different alt forms. For those of you who don't know, an alt form is a form that a jumper can shapeshift into at will. It is something that they get over the course of acquiring different origins and different perks. We now currently have one alt form, our main Luciano body, and a Sonic-style Mobian hedgehog that is Luciano's default form in this particular jump. So with this, we have the ability to be perceived as normal or average in any setting we go to with any of our alt forms, as opposed to potentially being terrifying and unnerving. Small animal assimilation refers to an ability that Chow have to absorb or copy some sort of energy from small animals in this game and animals in Sonic Adventure 2, as well as vials of energy in Sonic Adventure 2 and fruit in both Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, and makes it so that the jumper who purchases it, Luciano in this particular case, can absorb energy from the essence of their defeated foes. So Luciano in this particular setting would be able to defeat a robot and would free the animal that is trapped inside of it. They would be able to absorb energy from that animal, which does not seem to have any sort of super negative effect on the animal in lore. It just seems that once the animals have done that, they leave. At least that's as far as I know and as far as I can remember from my recollection of this game. But because of that, Luciano would be able to get stronger over the course of their jump, in addition to just gaining the things that they get at the beginning of the jump. Because for those of you who don't know, most of the time, most people rule that unless a specific perk or item or something that is fiat backed says so, you normally get it at the start of a jump. At least that is the ruling as far as I have seen it across every community that I am a part of. I do not know if there are any jump chain communities that dispute this ruling and that have their own rules, but that means that all of the perks and all of the items that we are buying here, Luciano will have access to from the very start. This particular perk is very important because we have both tougher enemies and more enemies, so having the ability to steadily improve things like your speed, your flying, and your strength over the course of the adventure, in addition to just getting them at a certain level at the start of the adventure, is potentially very important. Now we are going to go ahead and take a look over at the Guardian perk trees and the Robotic perk trees before we move on to try and find out what item or items we would like to buy with our surplus points. We started off with 1,700 points. We are now down to 1,400 points, at least after taking a look at what we initially purchased and our drawbacks. Yeah. We are now at Knuckles' perk tree. This is the Guardian perk tree. We are going to be taking the first 3 perks in it. So that is going to cost an additional 700. Let's go ahead and take a little bit to talk about why I chose these 3 perks. The first one is gliding, the second one is born fighter, the third one is wall climbing. These perks do exactly what it sounds like they do. While Knuckles is in midair, he can glide. Any jumper who purchases this ability can do the same thing. And with it, this allows you to do something in place of flying or just falling through the air. This also makes it so that you do not take fall damage. At least that's how it appears from the mechanics of the game in the game. So I'm going to go ahead and rule that while you are gliding, you do not take fall damage, which is just going to be extra useful if we are in fact falling from a tremendous height. But it does seem as though gliding does use some sort of internal stamina, so it is not necessarily an unlimited get out of jail free card when it comes to dealing with falling damage. It's just something that has to be used cleverly. It's something that could be used in the same way as, say, Link's paraglider in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Born Fighter is just a sort of overall competence booster when it comes to fighting, which I will almost invariably always purchase. And then there is wall climbing. Also with Born Fighter, it increases your durability, which is something that is really good, and also makes it so that you are strong enough to punch through robots. So I really like that. I think that is going to be incredibly helpful for dealing with the fact that our enemies are both more resilient and there are more of them. So Luciano the Jumper is absolutely going to have a lot of chances to go ahead and become a stronger, more competent fighter because of these perks and because of the additional challenges that we stacked on, which is something that I'm going to try to make a recurring theme. Additionally, there's wall climbing, which is a new maneuverability option. It makes it so that you can climb up and down walls as well as cling to them, which is going to be very helpful for taking a look at the robotic perk that we are going to go ahead and purchase. We're going to go ahead and take a look at that before we go over to the item section, but the robotic perk that we are going to be purchasing is the target locked perk. I am especially fond of this particular option just because with this, someone's body has a lock-on laser and a laser blaster that you can use to shoot your targets. We are going to just go ahead and say right now that in Luciano's case, I will just say that this is a baby laser attack. This sort of flavoring is not super important because it is clear that this is a sort of thing that is unique to Gamma, not completely unique. The E102 series all have blasters of some sort, but in the context of who can use it in the game, it is unique to Gamma. I am especially fond of this ability. It is worth noting that this constitutes Luciano's first ranged attack. This is currently the only ability in Luciano's repertoire that allows them to deal damage to creatures without physically hitting them. But this is such a good ability because it is something that can be targeted, it is something that can be used on enemies a fair distance away. With this, Luciano no longer has to fear the same types of enemies that they would have had to previously fear, although to be fair, Luciano also has super speed as a result of this jump, and as you can see, we are just doing a tremendous boost to Luciano's overall power as a result of this particular Jumpdoc. I previously said we were able to deal damage to enemies without physically hitting them. I meant without hitting them in melee range, just to be clear. We currently have 500 total points remaining. Also, if you've been hearing me use the term choice points, that is not the unit of currency that this particular Jumpdoc uses. It's fine, just a minor linguistic slip up on my part, not a big deal. So now we are going to go ahead and move on over to the items so that way we can take a look. One option for us is the Chow Garden. I really like the Chow Garden, but the Chow will be counted as companions after this jump, and I don't love that, so we are not going to do that. We are also not going to spend 400 of our remaining points on the Chaos Emeralds. Instead, we are going to go ahead and focus on our different mobility options. Just because of that, we are going to be talking about ways that we can interact with the world. So we're going to be grabbing the shovel claw, which will reduce us to 400 choice points total. Just said choice points again. You know what I meant. And with that, we have the ability to dig through all sorts of dirt and gravel, but we cannot dig through metal. This is really, really fun. I really like that. I really like this item. We are not going to be doing anything super funky with this, at least not out the gates. But this is something that is going to be part of our just sort of default repertoire moving forward, our sort of baseline arsenal. And the next upgrade that we are going to be getting is actually one of Gamma's upgrades. So we are going to be getting the laser blaster, and that makes it so that the shots fired from this gun have a blast radius, so we can use it to damage clusters of enemies. This is another really fun one. With this, I believe we have 300 total choice points remaining, and that is a sort of very fun number. We are going to be spending those choice points over in our essential body doc, our essential body modification supplements, which we are going to be going to as soon as I finish talking about what things are going to be like in this particular jump. So in this particular jump, we are just going to be following the video game. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and say that we are not going to be leaving once the plot of the game is over. We're not going to be going into Sonic Adventure 2. We're just going to be remaining in the setting for the full 10 years. I have no idea how long the actual game would take, especially not with an additional helper helping everyone along their different quests, but I personally think that this would be a very fun setting to live in for a decade. I definitely think that Luciano is going to make the most of this time. I think that Luciano is going to be a very potent powerhouse who is going to have enough time and energy to get significantly stronger and get significantly better at fighting as a result of their time in this particular jump, especially with the drawbacks that we have taken. I'm going to say that some of the standout moments for Luciano as a jumper here are going to be helping Sonic with some of the different boss fights, cheering Sonic on during the final thing, because Luciano does not have access to a super form, at least not as a result of this. It's worth noting that I am not entirely sure what to say. There is a couple of things of note here. It is entirely possible for someone to read Supersonic and Friends as granting Luciano the ability to go supersonic without having to pay any particular points. But instead, I'm going to say that Luciano's newest spectacular power set from this actually comes from the Chaos's Power perk, which is one of the things that we get for completing We Are All Super, which is something that Luciano will do over the course of this jump. This means that Luciano does have access to an ultra battle form that can unleash something like laser beams and stuff like this. I do not plan for this to be something that Luciano uses very frequently. I suspect maybe if we go to a setting like Doom or something, which we might eventually do, maybe then something like that would be the case. Maybe they would use those sorts of powers more often. But it is worth noting that having Chaos's power set is actually pretty intense, and it's just something that Luciano will have as an ace in the hole, just in case. Say if we go over to some sort of high-powered setting, something like Super Mario Galaxy or Super Mario Sunshine, there might be critical moments where Luciano would utilize their perfect chaos powers and would take on their equivalent of the sort of water elemental ultra titan form that perfect chaos has, including the ability to summon naturalized local disasters or localized natural disasters like mini floods, water spouts, and also shoot frickin' laser beams. So there is stuff that Luciano will be getting from here that are exceptional. I definitely think that one fair reading of the Supersonic and Friends thing is the ability to go supersonic. But I think that part of the reason why I don't really care for it is that we actually don't have Chaos Emeralds. And I'm not going to rule that even if we collect them over the course of the jump, which we would be doing, we would be keeping them with us in a non-fiat backed form. I'm just going to go ahead and rule, for the sake of limiting Luciano's power just a little bit here, that they do not have access to Chaos Emeralds. So even if we wanted to rule that they have the ability to go Supersonic and Friends, and to have a super form, they do not have fiat backed Chaos Emeralds. Any Chaos Emeralds they take would just not work at the end of the jump. And I know that that ruling is not how everyone will rule this. I just personally like the idea of limiting some of Luciano's overall power. That said, let's go ahead and move on over to the Essential Body Doc. We will be using the Essence Transfusion perk thing that makes it so that we can turn points from jumps into body mod points. We're going to be taking all of our remaining points. I will be redoing the math to make sure that we actually still have 300 as opposed to any other number, and we will be adding that to our body mod. I have gone back and I have done the math. We do in fact have 300 remaining points. Now, it is entirely possible that I have done the math wrong. If that is the case, we will adjust the build at some point in a future video, but we are now back in the Essential Body Mod simplification, and we are going to be spending all 300 of our points to be gaining Essence points, and we are going to be using those to modify our body mod. Back in front of the physical section of the Essential Body Modification Supplement, and it is worth noting that the things that we currently have are all of the brute freebies, and we have the second tier of the Physical Prowess perk, as well as the first tier of the Regeneration perk. We are going to go ahead and invest 100 of our Essence points into getting the second tier of the Regeneration perk, and that means that we are going to be having a healing factor that will always heal us even in our human form, even in our weakest form of minor wounds in seconds, major wounds in minutes, and severed limbs in hours. You, as a reminder, you can tell that this is discounted by going and looking at what sort of essences are after the DSC section of any of these perks. This means that we now have 200 points that we can go ahead and spend however we want. We are going to be moving over to some of the other sections now in order to go ahead and have a chance to take a look at this. I think that this is worth taking a look at just because these are things that are going to affect us from the very, very beginning of this particular jump. They are going to be used to increase our defaults in everything, and I think that that is exceptional. It is worth taking a look at every single thing here. We currently still have 200 essence points to use however we wish, and there is certainly a lot of stuff that we are able to go ahead and do. It is also worth noting that now you can begin to see some of the areas where brute stuff is not discounted. For example, in this particular perk, which is blank 1, and also in blank 2, you do not see the BRU, which is the shorthand for brutes, which means that brutes have to pay full cost for this. I am not attempting to get incredibly powerful with this. I am simply attempting to boost our overall capabilities. I think that this is a section that is worth taking a look at. I will go ahead and say that we are definitely going to be going down to I believe that we're actually going to go ahead and take a look at some of these supernatural perks. It is worth noting that abilities in the section are not allowed during gauntlets, and it's also worth noting that you have to have purchased all of the tiers of something else in order to get access to something here at least so long as it's not something like this where the first tier is available here. So with elemental resistance, we would be able to go ahead and purchase something from here, and actually brutes are capable of going ahead and getting discounts on this, which is fantastic. But I want to actually take a look at some of the other stuff. I'm also doing this to give people a chance to see this particular section. And I think that there is some stuff here that is worth talking about, that is absolutely worth looking at. I do think that we are going to go ahead and purchase, at the very least, the second tier of Form Mastery, which is going to leave us with another 100 points to use. Although actually it's only going to leave us with 50, because you have to purchase, or at least the ruling that I'm going to do for the sake of keeping things balanced, is that you have to purchase both tiers of something, but I still think that this is something that is worth getting. So with Form Mastery, it alters the rate at which someone can shift between their alt forms. Alt form shifting is not instantaneous. It is rapid. It is not instant. And that is something that we have now overcome. Because of purchasing these particular perks, we can change forms over the course of about a second, even if we cannot concentrate properly. Our alternate forms will never result in some form of dysmorphia. That is just the first tier. With the second tier, as tier 1, our shape changing is now instant, requiring only a thought to do so. And we will also have our clothing resize or morph into our body as most appropriate to your new form. That is an additional 150, and I think that we are going to go ahead and take a look at some of our other stuff. An option for us would actually be kind of interesting, is the ability to enlarge our forms. I actually really like this, and I do think that this is what we are going to get with our final 50 points. This is something that is exceptional. The reason it is exceptional is just because it makes it so that we can increase our strength and resistance, as well as actually increasing our land speed. And I think that that is fantastic. We are able to purchase that with our final 50 points just because it is discounted. And with that, we now have the full details of our supersonic build. And by our supersonic build, I mean that this is the first build that we're doing in a Sonic game. This has resulted in such a fantastical increase to our overall capabilities. I'm so thrilled. The next section of the video is going to be the conclusion. I hope that you all have enjoyed watching this video as much as I have. I am definitely going to take a little bit to talk about how all of these new choices are going to improve and impact our abilities over the course of this adventure, and how they are going to be something that strengthens us moving forward. Because of the new things that we have purchased, we have extraordinary abilities just moving into our time in Sonic Adventure. The ability to increase our size is something that increases our strength and our speed, which is exceptional given the fact that we are a fast friend and also a strong friend. So having those abilities coupled with the ability to instantaneously shift between forms at will is something that is frankly fantastic, especially because I suspect that Luciano is probably going to be eager to spend as much time as possible in their human form. I also think that having that extra boosted healing factor is something that is fantastic. I think that it's such a good bonus. The healing factor that we already had was always going to be useful, but the ability to recover from things like cuts and non-particularly dangerous, even bullet holes, such as if someone shoots you in like the leg in at worst minutes, is something that is frankly incredible, or at least if someone shoots you in the leg and doesn't do something like nicking an artery or something that would actually be particularly dangerous. If someone hits you in the leg and it just goes in and out and it's just a normal bullet wound, having the ability to heal that in minutes is fantastic. That is such a rad bonus to our overall abilities, especially in the setting where we're going to be facing off against way more enemies. It is something that is going to reward us for daring to be brave and daring to take those drawbacks. I really like that we actually did a significantly drawback heavy run this time rather than playing things safe, and as you can see, the end results of this are that Luciano is wildly more powerful than they were before. They have things like super speed, the ability to glide, relative immunity to fall damage, especially when coupled with their enhanced healing factor. Basically, as long as a fall doesn't kill them instantly, they are able to recover from it in, at most, the length of time it takes to take a decent nap. And I think that that is something that is going to be so cool moving forward. I really like that sticking with the theme of creating a bruiser-type jumper has resulted in having a jumper that is actually fairly tanky, a jumper that can be brave and can take risks. I'm really looking forward to our next couple of jumps. I don't have any grand sweeping plans in place to make our jumps go anywhere wildly dangerous, and in fact it's entirely possible that the next jump on our chain is going to be to a generic setting, but having all of these new abilities, especially some of the abilities that we receive as scenario rewards, especially the Perfect Chaos ability and also the enhanced learning speed from Sonic, are going to be so rad because it means that we can afford to take bigger risks. I also really like coupling things like the Chaos abilities with something like the form shifting abilities that we chose for this particular Essential Body mod. And I like the idea that Luciano chose those particular bonuses to their body mod while knowing that they would be getting Chaos's abilities, but not knowing what Chaos's abilities would be once they were in the jump, because they have no outside information about Sonic. They don't know any Sonic stuff, which is such a fun little way to like create drawbacks and to move things forward along in ways that make sense. I'm honestly so stoked to keep this chain moving and to go to our next adventure together. I almost wish that I filmed these videos more in advance, but I think part of the fun is thinking about it over the course of the week and carefully picking and choosing which particular jump to go to next, because originally I had a bunch of other options in mind. I had another generic, or I had Super Mario Sunshine as one of the next jumps on the docket. I also had Kill Bill. I think that Kill Bill is a fantastic jump. I also really like the idea of taking Kill Bill now that we have actual superpowers that are like really solid, because some of the perks and some of the items in the Kill Bill jump are really good for fighting things, but because of Luciano's abilities now, they are able to take more drawbacks and to take more risks going into that jump. And it's also worth noting that some of the perks over there, such as a perk that makes it so that the more enemies are fighting you at one time, the weaker they are in total, the weaker all of them become, would have been very fun to take if you take the like enhanced durability drawback and also the sheer numbers of enemies increasing drawback from this jump. But it's worth noting that drawbacks overcome perk effects. So like a perk's fiat backing is weaker than a drawback's fiat backing. That doesn't mean that your perks don't take hold. It just means that like anything that would allow you to easily overcome a drawback is weakened because of the nature of the fact that you have taken a drawback. That said, we are going to be thinking about what sort of jump we want to do next week. I'm going to be thinking about what sort of jump I want to do next week. It is entirely possible that we are going to go back to a generic, so that way we can keep things in order of generic, non-generic, generic, non-generic. But it's also possible that I will actually go ahead and do another normal setting as opposed to a drawback, or as opposed to a generic place, just because there is actually so much more potential that Luciano has now that they've gone to Sonic Adventure. There's so much more stuff that they can do because of the risks that they took here. And obviously, our end option for Sonic is going to be continuing to move along our chain rather than staying in Sonic, or going back home to their native Earth with the stuff that they already have. We are going to be moving forward. We have left Sonic Adventure with no companions, a bunch of new abilities, mostly new abilities, but also a handful of really cool items. Having things like the Lightspeed Dash and the shovel and also the splash damage laser beam attack are just so much fun. I am so stoked to see where we go next. I cannot wait to see you all again, and I hope that you have a truly wonderful day.